Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Podcast powered by First National. I am Adam Powadiuk. He is Aaron Cameron. And we are doing the first recording of the day at the Southwest Ontario Real Estate Forum. I think this is our third time doing it. Also, the third time is ran, so we are running a perfect record. But this region has experienced so much growth in the last couple of years that the Real Estate Forum saw fit to dedicate a forum just to this topic. So we're out here today recording a lot of podcasts. Our first guest of the day is a returning guest. He was actually with us last year at the forum. So he's been for, two of our three podcasting sessions here.
So good. We wanted to have him back.
Yeah. Predominant favorite now. Ryan Mounsey, CEO Urban Insights. We did get into some of his background in the last episode. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on that in today, but that episode is available. Of course, it'll be in the show notes. Ryan is speaking here today at the forum, but the reason we're having him back on so soon after the last appearance is because he recently released the National Housing Acceleration Blueprint, a highly detailed manual on how we're going to solve the housing crisis. Topical, of course, everybody seems very focused on affordability these days, and rightfully so, and lack of supply and all the the housing issues. So this is a blueprint, is right in the name, blueprint for a path out. So Ryan, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Adam. Great to be here.
So maybe just since the last time you were on, describe the journey that you've gone through to end up with the blueprint being released.
Aaron, it actually started from the conference last year and talking about housing. And so I sat on a panel on student housing, moderated it. And as we started to look at the student housing and the massive immigration numbers that were starting to come out of Canada, I work in housing. I work in anything from 3 units to 1,500 units. And as I started to put my background thoughts together, I started to pull together a group of people. And so this blueprint was prepared as a collaborative effort and worked on it for 7-8 months. And this journey that started on it was about how to tackle building 3.5 million homes by 2031.
That is the CMHC prescribed number.
Exactly. And everyone talks about a housing shortage, but no one provides the detailed analytics about, say, how do you get to 3.5? And so my background's economic development, it's urban planning, it's affordable housing. And so I put it together and this journey started. And so I pulled together a great team. And we said, how do we create 3.5 million homes? And so this blueprint came out. And I would say that it's 3 buckets. It's supply is one of the number one issues. It's funding as a core component of that. And it's speed. And when you put those 3 pillars together, how do you do the top 15 under 5? And the reason for that, it's 15 key strategies that lands the 3.5 million homes within 5 years. And so just try to keep it really simple, but make it analytically based to say 3.5 million. So that's where it started. The team that I'm working with, just to give some quick highlights to some of the folks that worked on it, Fitzrovia was a powerful group that provided insight. Momentum Developments, they were incredibly important in terms of the condominium market. Worked with Scarb, they're a modular build company. Worked with ANC, another modular company. Worked with Dural Communications, they are part of it. Cushman Wakefield Waterloo Region as a realtor in real estate for land development. And a number of other partners in this in terms of saying, how do you create these 3.5 million? And so it was a great project, launched it about a month ago, and it's receiving some great traction.
Do we want to tackle the 3 buckets one at a time, how we're actually going to do this?
So before we go there, we just go one layer further back. The 3.5 million, maybe just describe the calculus for that number.
It's I'm going to say a fairly well-known standard by CMHC to establish affordability by building an additional surplus 3.5 million homes by 2031. That is where you reach enough equilibrium to have the supply meet the demand based off population projections.
And that affordability level is what's that threshold that they're describing there?
So it's a very loosely defined term. It's not the CMHC standard of affordable housing. It's just affordability. Can the average person pay enough of their income for rent, for housing, and when will the rent rates be at a point where it meets the average income?
Great.
Do you agree that 3.5 is the right number?
Absolutely. Whether it's 3 million, 3.5, it's indifferent because the order of magnitude is so large. You have to throw everything in the kitchen sink at this.
And then let's put some context. How many are we building per year nationwide right now? Or maybe go if you have the stats for the last couple of years.
Well, I would say that we're underperforming by quite a bit. And so the specific stats are out there. And so we are not on track to meeting the 3.5 million.
By multiples, I think, is the...
Yeah,
probably the
I
answer.
think the number is like 100,000 or so, right? Like it's in and around. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact numbers either, but it's around 100,000. So like in 35 years, we'll build 3.5 million, which clearly is not the time horizon that CMHC is expecting for us to deliver those units.
There is an imbalance in the marketplace, and I think that's what's causing this national housing crunch, is that the population wave has surpassed the speed that the development community has been talking about for the last 10 years.
And are you agnostic when it comes to rental versus ownership models?
Totally am.
Units or
Or
units?
single family, I guess. Like it's anything. It's just a dwelling unit, right?
It's housing for all. It's an opportunity for all. So I think you can't just pick one horse. You have to look at everything. And to get 3.5 million, you need all the housing options on the table. And when you look at the tools available, there's different pressure points, and that's why it's the 15 strategies.
Let's do the three.
Let's do the three. Supply, which is, aligns probably well to people at this conference because there's always been a very strong argument that supply is the answer to this issue. The criticism, of course, of our industry is that it's self-serving, that, more product is better for real estate people. But supply, I'm a real estate person, so I do agree. Supply is definitely the answer.
Well, yeah, the demand alternative is what we're just going to shrink the Canadian population. Like, I don't know. Anyway, keep going. You go.
Let me listen to you. This is amazing. The supply is definitely more than 50% of the equation. You have to have enough supply to the marketplace to support the demand. Like that is the number one issue. It's the degree of affordability what that supply means. So it's the type of housing. And that's the nuances of...
Yeah, we don't need a whole bunch more $3.5 million homes.
Right. You need a series of different types of housing to meet that 3.5 million. And so I'd say the supply side of things are very important. So an example of 3 buckets within the housing blueprint. Everyone says let's build up. But for the average person, they want a single detached home or a townhouse or a stacked townhouse where they can afford if they have the ability. So the housing paper talks about, if you look at Canada, we're such a large country, second largest in the world. If you take 0.2% of the land area of all census metropolitan areas are CMAs. There's 41 of them in Canada. That's where 3/4 of all Canadians live. 0.2% of land area, you can fit 1 million homes on that. So why don't you create a national strategy and say, we're going to expand all CMAs by 0.2% land area? You municipalities and provinces figure it out, but here's your housing goal to get 1 million homes. I haven't heard anyone talk about that. So that supply side deals with one type of home ownership in housing. When you look at other types of housing supply issues, commercial shopping centers, the province of Ontario is bang on with their legislation. Make it easier to convert commercial shopping centers. That's about 2 to 3% of the land area in any municipality, commercial land. Industrial land is about 8 to 9%. 50% of all land is housing. 20% is roads, 25%. So if you pick on the smallest amount of land area that has the biggest return, if you convert and redevelop all these shopping centers with the retail industry kind of, I'm going to say, redefining itself, you can add more people to commercial plazas that support the retail. Cadillac Fairview's done a master job in converting these shopping centers, but so are other people. You can get about 500,000 units based off simple math to say, let's redevelop and make it easier for all shopping centers of all sizes to redevelop.
One of the attributes, of course, is that those retail sites are very well located by virtue of the fact that, they're picked because they're surrounded by a whole bunch of well-established, residential neighborhoods.
Transit, infrastructure, all those pieces. And Aaron, you're bang on. Like, they're in great locations, and that's where people want to live.
I mean, this is just one isolated example. RioCan was in the midst of a very significant program to convert a bunch of their retail or parking lots or some version of into apartments. They've now since put the brakes on that and I think are reversing course. Is market conditions now less conducive to that kind of a conversion?
From what we're hearing from the people who actually build the first order of development, the builders, the condominium market is very difficult right now. So the housing blueprint leans a little bit more to the rental market side, which is what's building more so right now. So that market piece in terms of a cautionary note to figure out where do interest rates lie, where does land values lie, the cost of housing, and what happens with these development charges. And so I think all those factors coming together about saying when's the right time for people to afford new housing. So yeah, it makes sense.
There's a few other challenges in the supply side, trades being one. Is there any plan to address the labor supply, over a 5 or 10 year time horizon, or before 2031, I guess, because that is the deadline?
The paper doesn't put trades in the top 15 strategies, but it's a fundamental issue for sure. And there has to be enough talent and enough expertise to build.
You may be jumping the gun, Adam. I bet you the third one of speed may answer the question of trades. I don't want to give the answer away, but let's get there. So let's go to 2. 2 is
funding.
I didn't want to say
this is us, Aaron. This is
I was actually, as you were going through the list of names and people that participated, I thought, yes, there's a whole segment of our industry that's not listed there on the lending community. Anyway.
Well, maybe next time we can bring you into the fold.
Yeah, we'll get in the next blueprint. Yeah.
So talk about funding.
Before I jump into funding, the other supply piece.
Oh, sorry. Sure.
I just want to hit the third one is municipal land at all 3 levels. If you take 10% of government land, you can get another 500,000 units to the market. Think of municipalities own a tremendous amount of land. Look what the federal and provincial governments are doing right now to activate their land holdings. But pick a target. 10% of all of your government-owned land, add into and accelerate the approvals process for new housing. There's your land supply, and they're in great locations as well. And so I think that supply side is that you can go through requests for proposals. Government can say, is it affordable housing? Is it market housing? And so that supply side, you just need a standard, a criteria. Mm-hmm. There's wonderful precedents and pilot projects of showing how to redevelop municipal lands or government-owned lands. But this created a national policy, 10%. Get that supply to market. Now we can talk about
funding.
Well, I have one more question on that before we move on.
Yeah.
Do you envision that as government selling the land to private developers to deliver units, or developing themselves? This of course, would tie into some of Carney's, election talk about the government getting more involved in building.
Well, listen, there's so much.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
Build it. Yeah.
Just 3.5 is the target. We got to get there.
Yeah, and let the municipalities, the controlling provincial governments, the federal governments figure out what type of housing that they want to provide. It's a volume issue, a supply issue, and so there's examples of land leases. City of Waterloo, where I'm located, just went out to market with an affordable housing proposal for 25 acres of land to build 700-800 units. They put an RFP out. Like that's game changing.
Well, First Nations communities have figured out that game, right? They've got a ton of land, particularly in the BC regions, where they're doing land leases, partnering with private developers, and building a ton of apartments and other residential units.
Rather just the one-time cash infusion of a sale, and then
participating in the equity, yeah, exactly, and generating cash flow for their members. It's like that model works, proven.
Exactly. Just get some baseline criteria.
Okay, funding.
All right, let's go to funding.
Yeah.
Finally.
How much money do we need here?
Yeah. And how much? Yeah, how much is going to First National to finance?
Yeah. Well, maybe you can share some light on this. I think the funding model, in terms of the type of housing, there's a couple of different buckets that are needed. One is affordable housing. So as a smaller component of the housing spectrum, and what this paper talks about as a new public-private partnership, is let the nonprofits and public sector build the affordable housing. Let the private sector partner with people to build mixed income housing, but focus on market housing. And that is probably the best most efficient process to get housing to market without overcomplicating it. And so if the national government, they had their program called the Rapid Housing Initiative, if they were to maintain that and commit to a 5-year commitment, like it's a crazy process when you look at it. You have to apply, you have to bid, it's billions of dollars. You have to build it within, 6 months or a year. And it's very stressful for the community, particularly the nonprofits, to put that together in such a short period of time. Just create a more balanced program. 18 months, it's there for 5 years every year. And your target is 300,000 new affordable homes. That level of funding, I think, will provide the affordability side of the equation to add significant housing to the markets across Canada. The first 2 years have been a very incredible program. Get a federal program out there to say this is our consistent and commitment to affordable housing. You got to put some skin in the game, and it's billions of dollars. But boy, do they deliver. So that's one example of public, well, that's more nonprofit side, affordable housing. The other side of funding is a cost-sharing model for development charges. That is probably the number one issue being talked about right now in affordability. It's a big piece. And what people fail to understand is that all costs get passed on to the end user. It doesn't matter if it's rental or ownership. It gets passed on to you. And if the market can't support it, then they're not going to build it. And that's why they put a pause. And so when the pro formas start to work, and what this blueprint does is it takes a pro forma-based approach to different scales of development. I worked with the development community to kind of create some general assumptions, is 50% reduction in DCs. Whether that's funding at the local level, the provincial level, one of those two levels will have to cut in at least 50% contribution to discount the development charge rate. As a business, I help small clients build incredible housing projects, and it comes down to the, do they make a 5% cap rate? Do they make a 3% cap rate for a long-term hold? Like, these are razor-thin projects right now on the rental side. And so by cutting off the edges, put a freeze on parkland fees. In the paper, I put a little stop sign on it. Like, this for 5 years. Put a pause on it. Get the housing to market. We got enough park spaces. Put some money in it and look at it in 5 years from now. Get the housing to market that fits. So those are just some examples of funding, and there's more.
I'll jump in on a bunch of things. So there is currently a RFP process going on for the National Rental Protection Fund, an RFP for the RPF. Which I think will contribute to some of that funding. 30% of, just general, 30% of all apartment and ownership development costs are development charges. 30% that are passed on. So you think about $1 million condo unit, $300,000 of that cost to build is paid to government, and so you're saying, carve off $150,000 of that cost to build, and now that unit becomes $150,000 cheaper because that cost gets passed down directly to the end occupier. I'm just laying it out because I think that's very, 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 very important. We were at the Land and Development Conference last week and interviewed a number of condo developers. And in summary, and likely those episodes have now been out, so here's my summary of the episodes that you've listened to. In Toronto, just using that as the barometer, it costs about generally sort of $800 to $1 million of just all-in cost to build a unit. And right now, including the DCs, so let's say it's $1 million, it's $300,000 of DCs. You can only sell those units for, I think one of the guests said it. There's a market right now at $800,000. So it's $1 million to build, yet the price is $800,000. If you lopped off the DCs, or at least half of the DCs, immediately your cost to build now becomes back in line with
a thin margin.
And that $800,000, that's the price because that's the affordable price. Like that's what ultimately the market can bear, because that's what our income levels nationally as a community are able to afford, right? Like it's just, that's the equilibrium. And so the DCs, which is the only way that you can really get those prices down, because that $1 million, that really was with land being zero. Like that wasn't including a big land price. That was really just the costs of the steel, of the concrete, of the labor, of all the just the inputs to go to build a unit. So there's this disequilibrium, and I think the only solution, like I don't think there's any other solution, particularly for high rise, construction in major urban centers, is that discount on the development charges.
It's the primary mechanism to bring that alignment.
Because it's a stroke of a pen. Like I guess you could subsidize the trades. You could, I don't know. I'm sure there are lots of other ways
Subsidize
that you could
the finance.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. Right. Like I'm sure there's lots of other ways you could. But just eliminating that DCs, it would take one stroke of the pen, and immediately you would have a ton of development just launch. Right. So.
Well, in today's market and the provincial tools in there, and this one's not in the blueprint, but it makes a lot of sense, is when you look at deferring development charge payment to building occupancy, delaying those costs by 2 to 3 years, that's interest costs that accrues on a project. And as well, when you look at the cost to finance a project, they're now, the developer and the projects are receiving income. So now they can pay for it. So it's a timing issue as well. So that funding model is also a timing issue. And when you tie in all the tools, I think you get a much better result in terms of getting market ready housing. Yeah. And you'll unlock some
even
housing.
The DC deferrals, I agree. Like at least that decreases the equity requirement to get that model, to get that project going and to get that project built. The challenge with DC deferrals is ultimately it has to be paid. Mm-hmm. And to be fair, particularly when we're talking about apartments, maybe not condos, but when you're talking about apartments, I guess it's true for condos also, because at the end of the day, the developer will ultimately have to absorb that cost and pass that cost down to the condo. So it really probably doesn't impact the condo values very much. As a lender on the apartments, I have to assume that's part of the budget, whether it gets paid today or gets paid at the end. It's just like, the GST deferrals, unless it was a waiver, but they do self-assessments and they pay the GSTs at the end of the development. We assume that's got to be paid. Like it doesn't matter when it's paid. It's part of the budget and it's included in our calculus for the leverage and the amount of loans that we're going to be comfortable providing, and therefore, impacts the equity requirements.
Well, and the other thing notionally too is, DCs are supposed to pay for the impact of these new units in a neighborhood, and at the start of a project, there's no impact from those new units yet because the residents are not living there. So notionally, it still falls in line with the goal of DCs, which is to manage that the increased load of new people living in the neighborhood.
And the other nuance to this, and this is where it gets really technical, is that when you look at development charges, I think the other aspect to it is that the unfettered, the unconstrained issue of increasing of development charges. How can it go up 30-40% in a year? Maybe if you had a phase structure that says the maximum you can increase it, it's 5%. Get some, that's what this provincial government's talking about, is a freeze on DCs, and if it's lower, you get that back. You got to put some caps on this. These caps are like parkland fees. It's unreasonable to have something change by 20-30%.
We've had city councilors on this, and we've had this sort of conversation. And the reality is, politicians, one, don't necessarily appreciate how that, because it seems like a tax on developers, but it's not. It's a tax on future homeowners who don't exist, who don't have a voice, who have no way to lobby, have no way to show up at community meetings and yell and scream. So it's an easy tax for cities because there's zero resistance. The developers complain, but nobody cares about the big, bad, greedy developers, right? And that's the challenge. It's way harder to increase property taxes. It's way harder to increase all sorts of different levies that the city has at their disposal. DCs are just, it's clean sailing. And that is ultimately lazy politicians, I'm sorry, but lazy politicians just looking for an easy way to increase their revenues with zero resistance.
I'm just going to add in 2 quick points.
You can agree with me too if you want. I'm teasing.
I'm like Switzerland. The 2 pieces I would say to that.
He just winked. I'm just saying. He just winked at me.
Is that tax increment financing? Look for easy wins for the political win. Discount property taxes by 50% over 5 years. That piece on a condominium side or rental side as like that has to be factored in as well. And so there's all these tools. You just have to look at the entire suite. And I think on the politician side, where it's really important that everyone gets on the same page is that they're the decision makers. At the end of the day, that's where these initiatives get supported or they get refused. And so it's about education. It's about understanding, about saying, how do you take a non-biased approach about saying, what is a pro forma and how does it work? What is the pro forma for your community? And so if you had more analytics behind it, more data behind it, I think you get better policy that gets housing to the market without overreaching some of these goals. You know, parkland fees is a perfect one in there. We have great parks in all of our cities. It's just going to take time to build new ones, upgrade them, but play the long ball and then use the money. But right now, put a pause on it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah, it's not permanent.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think there's different nuances and you can have, like, to your audience and your groups, this is the public-private partnerships where it takes everyone. So that's the blueprint is we need a better education.
Anything else on funding?
We covered a lot of ground.
Okay, I jumped the gun early on supply, so I want to make sure we're ready to go to speed.
Appreciate it.
We're ready. Yeah,
we're ready.
Yeah.
I'm excited about this, and I want to do a quick amble. So I've spent a ton of time over the last sort of 18 months working on modular manufacturing, financing, working with CMHC on a modular pilot project, and we've got now some. I think I've been quite honest with you. I believe the very first true private developer, private manufacturer for profit and market rent modular apartment construction ongoing, financed by CMHC. So I feel like it's the crack in the dam for this modular, I don't know, era to start in Canadian apartment manufacturing construction. Let me say that again. It's the crack in the dam of this era of modular development in the Canadian commercial real estate community.
That's catchier. So, speed. Modular obviously is really exciting in Aaron's world.
Well, he mentioned 2 modular partners, so I'm assuming that's part of the solutions here for speed. Did I just steal your thunder? He's looking at me like, why'd you steal my thunder?
You just add to the thunder.
Is it a tech solution?
I think you have to be very careful with prefabricated construction. Tech solutions, a piece of it, but about how much capital you put into modularization. I think other people have coined that term. That prefabrication process, it is about speed. And so as I partnered with ANC and SCARB on this, there's different types of modular construction, and financing is a big piece of that on the condominium side, the private side. You got to pay for off-site storage and holding, so that's the big catch there. And so there's teams working on this, and I think you'll find new products out there that find solutions to do more private sector condominium development, and that's going to be a big opportunity. On the rental side and the affordable housing side, what the projects that I've been exposed to, 50 to 70% faster. That is the construction speed. You still have to pre-design it, you still have to prefabricate it, but the install time. I was at the St. Felix install in downtown Toronto. It's the St. Lawrence Market. Within 5 days, something like 40 units got installed, and I was on the construction site with them laying the hallway down as we walked across the building. That's how quick it was.
Literally like Lego pieces.
It was surreal having like this platform fall in front of you as you connect the buildings between the 2 sides, and all the safety measures were in, of course. But the speed of construction is second to none. I think the architecture and the design of it's coming a long way. So you have to wrap your hand around there. This isn't CCAN construction. This is purpose-built pre-modular housing. It's one solution that is faster. The costs will range. Some of it will be more cost competitive, and others it might be market, but it's the speed. And then that ties in with financing. So I'm a big fan of modular housing in terms of a solution for speed, because it gets housing to market quicker. And then when you look at the time of construction in there, you have different developers that do different types of construction. They can budget that in. But if you're talking about quick projects, design a modular site and use that as a pilot and test it out. And so I think that's the path forward.
One of the I think to emphasize one of the things you're saying is you can't buy a site, design a building, and then go, I wonder if we could make this modular or prefab. Like, you've got to have the idea of some sort of modularization or prefabrication or panelization, whatever it may be. All of those things contribute to this, and that can't be done as an afterthought. Like, it has to be one of the core tenets at the very beginning of the development. It is much, you'll have much more success if you're planning from the very beginning of how you want modularization to be a component or core component of your development. We've had scenarios where it's become a solution to a problem, not the solution from the get-go, if you know what I mean.
Totally. And I think that's where the industry is shifting. You're going to have more companies that are scaling up in the modularization of
Mattamy Homes just announced a manufacturing warehouse, a manufacturing business.
I saw that. That's a big signal.
Yeah, well, Peter Gilgan, one of the most successful housing developers in Canadian history. Like, that's a huge whale joining that industry.
So it comes back to the basis point of you need all types of housing, all types of options available. And in a time and a moment when we are trying to contract the immigration numbers right now, we still have demand for housing. We're behind housing.
3.5 million behind. Like, that number came out long before we accepted 1 million, people into Canada in 2023 or whatever year that was, right? Like, that's just exacerbated. I wonder if CBC goes and revisits that number and it's actually more like 5 million or something, something absurd.
Leave it to the economists to figure that out.
Yeah. What are the other big choke points in the speed category?
City approvals.
I was going to work my way there. I spent 20 years in government. I worked for the city of Kitchener, City of Waterloo at the region. And what is slowly getting better is speed. I was in a municipality yesterday. They're batting 100% on their review times for site plan approvals. And then you can go to a different municipality that's hitting 10%. So I think it hasn't become standardized in terms of everyone putting the investments in place to be efficient about it. There's still a lot of struggles that are happening. But if you get the speed equation done correctly, you'll get more confidence on the development side to build. I'm working with one builder right now that's building 0 parking near where I have my office. And they're going in completely at site plan stage. And they found the perfect site to look at building quickly for 45 units. So I'm looking at this as a test scenario, but saying, how quickly can we do this? The pre-consultation stage went by quick, but let's have time limits on pre-consultation because an application hasn't started yet. So let's get some tight turnaround times on pre-cons. People are starting to respond to that better. Government agencies, it's fine to have the municipal side attempt to reach those targets. What about provincial agencies? What about other agencies, conservation authorities? Everyone needs to be on the same page. You're only good as your weakest link. And so I think that's where the speed issue and municipal approvals need to happen, is that everyone needs to be on the same page. One of the projects that I'm working on, it's just a perfect test case scenario. We're hitting all the timelines, and that allows a developer to move on to the next project with confidence. If projects start to stall and hold, then the whole system comes to a grinding halt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've had multiple guests on our podcast talk about part of the challenges, and it's municipality by municipality, that you can get unreasonable requests for reports, and it may be environmental, it may be wind effects, it may be sunlight impacts. Like, you just all of a sudden, there often is or there is not any kind of appeal. someone puts their hand up inside the city and says, I want this report, and now you've got to go and get it. It might take you 4 months to produce that report, or, if it's a seasonality thing, you got to do an environmental report on some sort of species that is only available during the springtime and it's the fall. There's just, and so an ability to kind of say, wait a minute, that's unreasonable, or to ask for an appeal or debate the rationale. That you can save 6, 8, 12 months at times just from that process alone.
What about the salamanders, though? This is
Well,
the unfortunate casualty.
I'm going to bring it back to maybe just some recent announcements. Province of Ontario made some of these changes in terms of a complete application. If you have in your official plan, you can still ask for these studies. But if you don't, you can't ask for the study moving forward. And so I think what they're doing is that they're making everyone accountable to say what's important. But if you didn't get it in place, then you don't have that opportunity anymore.
It reduces the unknowns.
Bill
Exactly.
Bill 5. Sorry, what is it?
17.
17.
Yeah, there's Bill 5 out right now, and Bill 17, which is in place.
And they're productive.
I think it adds certainty to your point, Adam. It's predictable. It's certain. When I work on projects, the first thing we do when there's a wind study, that's an 8-week turnaround time. We get a concept plan. The developer has to pay for every amendment to the design, but you start that process sooner just to get out of the gates early. And so that it's about understanding what studies are needed and how much time they take. But the better we get at fine-tuning it and narrowing the scope of some studies, I'm an urban designer, and a key piece of this is that good urban design makes for better projects. I agree. But in every planning report that I do, which is one of those basic approved consultant reports, if you're a professional planner like an engineer or an architect, it's a complete application. The review time, you got to accept it as complete, is that I put an urban design section in my planning report. So I don't have to do the report necessarily, but I can enhance the project through the planning report. So on the private side, we can find tools to make it more efficient versus doing a whole separate report. We can add in elements. So I think it's an evolution, the scope, and nothing's worse than getting a study at the very end of the process. So I think that these processes will add better consistency and predictability.
I think we're just about at a time. For closing thoughts of the 3 buckets, which one's going to be the most difficult to implement and which one's going to be the easiest to implement? Where we see the most progress within those 3 buckets?
All of them will involve effort, political capital, and will. I think the easy, quick wins is facilitating, and one of the items I didn't talk about, create a national policy that incentivizes no height and density along major transit station areas. That's an easy win in terms of saying, let's build big buildings near transit.
I've ranted before on this podcast on the very topic, yes.
Okay, so to me, that one is a more simple argument to take a position on, but will require political support to deliver that. On the opposite end of the spectrum, I do think, because I worked in the space for a little bit, getting the political capital to invest billions of dollars to build the rapid housing initiative, that's a big money ask in a time that's really difficult. So that's a financial request, and I think that's a very difficult one, but it's also easy at the same time. You can unlock a lot of housing by moving that forward.
We had Nadine LeBlanc, who is one of the senior vice presidents at CMHC Policy. Do you remember the number of 1970 investment that CMHC made?
$2 billion.
$2 billion in 1970 dollars that the CMHC government infused into housing development.
Direct investment, not incentivizing
per year.
lenders.
Per year, the federal government was it was spending $2 billion a year in 1970, which I don't even know what that would be. We did the math, right? It's a whole bunch more billions of dollars per year that the federal government was investing in housing back then. That number today would be like heads would roll if someone suggested we should spend that kind of money on housing now.
Different tools. I do talk about CMHC funding, and this is part of the funding buckets. Just look at all the options. Every option, every strategy is a win, but you need them all to move the needle. And so I think start with the simple ones, move those one through. But 2031 is around the corner. By 2040, we're going to be at 50 million people. If we don't get the housing now, we're going to be in 10 years. So I think some dramatic choices need to be happening right now. People are changing and looking at new options. So let's just, as a movement, encourage everyone and challenge everyone to build more housing.
This is available for download, right?
It is. Right now, I have it on my LinkedIn, and I have that on a personal post. And as a budding small company with a staff, I'm going to be launching the website in a couple of weeks, and it'll be available on the website at urbaninsights.ca.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks very much for coming on. We really appreciate you taking the time. Great conversation. We love this stuff, and I think it's very, very important. We're all Canadian. We all understand the issue for our generation, for future generations. So I thank you for committing to it, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks very much. Aaron, Adam, love to follow up with the next housing paper.
Looking forward to it. Make sure you include First National next time. Okay?
Exactly.
Thanks to First National for powering the podcast, and thanks to the Real Estate Forum for hosting us here at the Southwestern Ontario Real Estate Forum.